Hi, my name is Xana, and I am a clinical mental health therapist. We won't be doing therapy today. What we will be doing is looking at emotions. So on the topic of emotions, as a disclaimer, if you're feeling really pushed around right now, really escalated emotionally, if you feel like you might be in crisis, by which I mean in danger of experiencing an urge to hurt yourself or hurt someone else, please hit the stop button on this video right now. Look at the top or the bottom of the web page that you're on and click helpful links. Get yourself the help that you need immediately. Thanks. So, experiencing problems with emotions. This is not a new experience. Rumi, the 13th century mystic poet, knew a lot about the challenges of emotions too, and wrote a beautiful poem that I'd like to share with you. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each one has been sent as a guide from beyond. Have you ever lost your temper and wondered, who invited that guest? How did that happen? Well, everyone at one time or another has felt overwhelmed with a powerful emotion. And that's because emotions just show up. In a sense, we can say, it's not even really our fault. Emotions show up. Emotions really, though, are not the problem, which is good because they do just show up and there's not much we can do about that. But we are responsible for how we respond to the emotions that we're experiencing. How we respond to our emotions is precisely what takes us in the direction of producing positive experiences in our life or negative ones. So the important part to remember here is that we have choices. We have choices about how we're going to respond to our emotions. The tricky thing is, though, we have to have enough space between us, ourselves, as an entire being, and how we feel, our emotions. We have to have that space to be able to notice what we're feeling as something different from who we are. If I feel angry, I am not the entirety of simply anger. I'm something bigger than that. But I have to have the mental space to be able to claim that. So, to that end, and to help us have ways of getting that space, of gaining that space, to be able to see and respond to our emotions, I have a couple of tools or models that I'd like to share with you. So the first one invites us to consider our emotions as if they are our children. Now, our internal children, not children out into the world, but our internal children, and to consider that our life is like a car. So our car can be well-tuned, it can be low on gas, maybe it's been in the garage for too long, But regardless of the condition of our car or where it's going or not, I think we can all agree that it's a bad idea to let our children drive. Their feet are not long enough to touch the pedals. They can't look over the dashboard, and it's predictive of accidents. So our kids, our emotions, have a proper place. Because while it's true that they can't drive, it's also true that you can't just throw them in the trunk. Our feelings need to be heard and seen and listened to. They need to be invited in, just as Rumi suggested. In the case of this metaphor that I'm using, it's the car seat. That's where the kids go. And when we use the car seat, we have made way now to claim our place in our lives, and that would be in the driver's seat. So this metaphor allows us to recognize our kids, recognize the emotions, to keep them safe and protected, to pay attention to them, to be a responsible adult, to be a responsible caretaker. And it allows us to respond to our emotions. And again, the key is being mindful, being able to create that space where we can observe and respond to our emotions. There is another model that I'd like to share with you today, and it comes from a contemporary figure, Dr. Daniel Siegel, who is a psychiatrist who's worked for decades in neuroscience, brain science. And he presents for us what he refers to as the handy brain model, ergo hand. So here are the parts of the brain as Dr. Siegel presents them in the handy model. We've got the spinal cord. At the base of our palm, we have what some people refer to as the reptilian brain, the old brain, evolutionarily, the old brain, the first part of the brain in the nervous system to develop. In the middle part of the brain, we have the limbic center, the emotion center of our brain. So we have these soft, squishy features, the hypothalamus and the hippocampus and the amygdala. It's where we register big emotions. That's where the fight, flight, fright, concern, all of those sorts of things happen. And on top of that, we come to the part of the brain that we are most familiar with, at least visually, which is the cortex. It's that part with all the folds and convolutions. So the cortex covers the middle brain. And there's a particular part of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, which is where our executive functions live. So planning, organizing, thinking, ideating, conceptualizing, all of those, and also values, thinking about what's important in our life and decision-making. All of those things are happening in the prefrontal cortex. Dr. Siegel wants us to be able to take this message home about the brain, that when the brain is in order, it is an integrated system. The prefrontal cortex and the rest of the cortex is in communication with the midbrain. The midbrain is in communication with the brain stem. And all of these parts, when they're integrated, allow us to be able to think about, to perspective take on our emotions. They create the possibility of experiencing that space, that moment of mindfulness that will allow us to respond to, rather than react from, our emotions. So we're all familiar with how that works, which is probably most of the time, thankfully for most of us. But we also have times when we have experienced the middle brain being overexcited, too much energy, too much stimulation, and we feel overwhelmed. And when that happens, as Dan Siegel has suggested, the thing that occurs next is that we flip our lids. No longer is the prefrontal cortex in communication with the rest of the brain. We become enmeshed with our emotions, which leads to us responding at kind of a knee-jerk sort of level, rather than having the opportunity to mindfully reflect on what's going on in our life right now, how we feel about it, and what we need to do. So I hope both of those models can perhaps provide you with some ideas for practice that might make a real difference in your life. The upstairs brain talking to the lower level brain, super, super important. Us taking our space in the driver's seat, accepting responsibility for our own feelings, our own emotions. All of these things go in the direction of allowing us to be better decision makers, which leads to a better relationship with ourselves, with other people, and with the world. So, happy driving, have a good trip, and thanks for showing up today.